Hi, this presentation continues the series on multiple regression and takes a little more time to discuss the use of categorical variables in regression models. When a categorical independent variable has more than two levels in a multiple regression model, we need to create additional dummy-coded variables. If we were working with a variable with three levels, we would create k-1 dummy-coded independent variables or 3-1 or 2 dummy-coded variables. In this example, imagine we have a predictor called political affiliation in our model, and that it was operationally defined with three levels: Republican, Independent, and Democrat. We would create two dummy-coded variables in which one of the groups would be the reference group. In this example, I coded all Republicans 1 on a new predictor called pol1, and this would make Republicans into the target group for that independent variable. And I could code independents as 1 on the second new predictor called pol2. That would make independents the target group for this new variable. Because Democrats would be scored 0 in both variables, they would be the reference group for both of the new predictors. So pol1 would contrast Republicans and Democrats, and pol2 would contrast independents and Democrats. On the right side of this slide is an example of how we would code these variables in SPSS. Participants 1 and 6 are Republicans because they are scored 1 on pol1. Participants 3 and 5 are independents because they're scored 1 on pol2. And finally, participants 2 and 4 would be Democrats because they were scored 0 on each of the dummy-coded predictors. Let's look at an example. In 2004, Prinstein and LaGreca studied the effect of rejection and aggression on externalizing behavior in adolescent girls. On the first step of their hierarchical model, they enter age and ethnicity predictors. Because ethnicity was operationally defined as white, African American, and Hispanic, they created two dummy-coded variables, and white served as a reference group for each of these independent variables. This table presents the results of the first step of their model, in which demographic factors were entered. The variables ethnicity, African American, indicate that African Americans were the target group and whites were the reference group. In the predictor ethnicity, Hispanic Americans were the target group and whites were the reference group. As demonstrated in this slide, there were no significant findings for any of these predictors. I want to urge caution interpreting these findings because this is just an excerpt from a larger model and from a study that considered many hypotheses. This finding is presented for educational purposes only, as not a definitive discussion of the results of the study. Here's a summary of the meaning of positive and negative partial regression coefficients for dummy-coded variables. For a predictor with a positive b, as the score increases, or as we consider the target group, scores on the criterion increase. A significant finding tells us that the target group has a significantly higher mean score than the reference group. Remember that the means are being adjusted for the presence of other variables in the model. For an independent variable with a negative b, as the score on the predictor increases, or as we consider the target group, scores on the criterion decrease. A significant finding tells us that the adjusted mean of the target group is lower than the adjusted mean of the reference group.